failed once again to reach a consensus over calls to allow desperately needed aid to war-torn Syria. Joining me now is UNICEF New Zealand Executive Director Vivien Maidaborn. Vivien, good morning.
Good morning.
Surprised?
No, not surprised, but it's just one more attempt and there'll be more attempts. As recently as last week, there was a ceasefire to allow actually electricians to get into Aleppo to get water pumps going again. That was only a 2-hour window, but the attempts to have that happen are unceasing.
But you know, why do we have to attempt to have it happen? Why can't the Security Council, why can't the United Nations say this is a humanitarian crisis which is into its, sixth year now?
Sixth year.
Sixth year, and the situation right now on the ground in Aleppo, am I safe to say, is worse than it's ever been?
Yes, 43, 44 degree heat, 2 million people without water. It is desperate and beyond desperate.
You see, so here we are in paradise. It is, 14 and a half minutes past 7 on a Wednesday morning, and there are thousands, tens upon tens of thousands of people in a bombed city in 43 degree heat with no water.
Yeah. So on a day like today, UNICEF will provide 2 million people with water in Aleppo.
If it can.
Well, no, the systems are in place for that to happen so long as there's power. And if there's not power, then what you can imagine is every child from 5 to 9, 3 or 4 times a day carrying buckets of water backwards and forwards from where the tanks are to where their homes are. So what the electricity...
And risking their lives to do it.
Absolutely. Sometimes crossing military lines to do that. So it's untenable. Yes, I think all of us, citizens of the world, need to be asking, how do we make the Security Council regulations and laws and motions that
But this
they
is,
pass
how enormously
critical?
frustrating is this for you? You are the New Zealand Executive Director of UNICEF. Why do New Zealanders have to petition the bloody UN? I mean, the UN has been put in that position to sort out problems like this, hasn't it? And because of the veto in some cases, they just can't do it. They can't reach a consensus that this should not be allowed to continue.
Well, it doesn't stop humanitarian aid. Whether or not the Security Council can really deliver everything we want them to, it doesn't stop agencies like UNICEF on the ground delivering aid every day. And I think...
It doesn't help them though either, does it?
It totally doesn't help them, but it doesn't stop us.
But is it a frustration though for you that all you're doing really is patching up from one day to another? You're keeping that poor child alive so that they can live another day in horror.
You know, there are 13 million people in Syria who need help, and 6.5 of them aren't even in the home where they started 5 years ago. So there's a massive issue. Part of it is frustrating, but part of it is incredibly satisfying that despite all that hardship and terror, there are kids every day going to school, there are kids every day getting food. I think there were 5 polio immunisation campaigns last year in Syria, often across those lines. So to tell you the truth, yep, the Security Council need to keep improving their deliverables, but it's not going to stop people in really focused humanitarian aid.
Are you hopeful that there will be not just a ceasefire, but are you hopeful there'll be any resolution in this in the near future? And by that I'm talking months.
Yes, I am. And the reason...
Is this coming from your people on the ground?
Yes, because right now we've got Aleppo is the last stronghold of the Syrian Freedom Army. If that falls, and that's the purpose of these no humanitarian breaks, the government is feeling increasingly confident. Now, whatever we think of the politics of that, and that's complex, if that falls, then that's a tipping point in this war towards the government reclaiming. And similarly, the so-called Islamic State is in a very precarious position.
Yes, they are. All right, so the future, if the future is rosy, is in the hands of Bashar al-Assad, isn't it?
That's right.
There's an irony in that, isn't there?
There's a terrible irony in that. From UNICEF's point of view, though, we will work with the government. And right now, they're the legitimate government.
What is your message to Murray McCully? And because New Zealand next month, it is our dubious honour of chairing the Security Council for the last time in this cycle. What should we be trying to do? We have said publicly that Syria is our main aim.
Well, the New Zealand government have done a good job at lobbying for humanitarian corridors, and they've achieved more than we might have. So I think that's the first thing. I think we should be proud of what they've focused on doing. We need more of that. And we need to kind of break through this kind of trading on decisions like what's happening in Syria to a real commitment to peace.
Because that's what it is, sitting on the Security Council. What you're doing is you're haggling.
Yeah.
You're haggling over people who are dying. It doesn't seem to be enough to be able to say, can we reach a consensus that these people are actually dying and living in horror?
There's no doubt this war, all parties have broken more sort of international agreements about how wars happen than any other war. And, you know, at a time, the Security Council's overseen that. So,
Do you think about these people sometimes just finally, Vivien, because you're in touch with your people on the ground over there all the time, you know just truly how horrific it is.
Yeah, I do.
Do you sometimes just wake up at night and think, how is it possible that we can live happily in this country knowing that this is going on?
No, I don't think that. I think that all of us are now global citizens, and all of us now have to care what happens everywhere in the world.
We should be ashamed then, if you're right. If we're all global citizens, we should be bloody ashamed, shouldn't we?
We need to all
6
feel
years
like
it's
we
been
know
going
what
on.
our part of this journey is. What's my part in solving this?
All right, Vivien, I thank you very much, and hopefully this can be solved, even if a happy future looks like one under the control of Bashar al-Assad. Vivien Maidaborn, thank you very much for your time. UNICEF New Zealand Executive Director. Coming up on Paul Henry, it's 20 minutes past 7 now. Hundreds are gathered.